There is a border where gunfire echoes every single night, and most of the world has stopped listening. When was the last time you heard about a war that has been active for 77 years? The Korean War never ended. On July 27, 1953, North Korea, China, and the United Nations Command signed an armistice, which is not a peace treaty. It is a ceasefire agreement, a pause button that was supposed to be temporary. No treaty was ever signed, which means, technically, legally, the war continues to this day. The Korean Demilitarized Zone, or DMZ, stretches 160 miles across the peninsula and is 2.5 miles wide. It is the most heavily fortified border on Earth. Nearly 2 million troops face each other across this line, separated by minefields, barbed wire, and decades of mistrust. This matters now because small incidents along this border have the potential to escalate into a conflict that could involve nuclear weapons, major global powers, and millions of civilians. In 1950, North Korean forces crossed the 38th parallel and invaded South Korea. The war that followed killed an estimated 3 million people, many of them civilians. American, South Korean, Chinese, and Soviet forces all took part. Cities were flattened, families were split in half, some forever. By 1953, both sides were exhausted. The armistice was signed at Panmunjom, a village that now sits inside the DMZ. The agreement created a buffer zone and set rules for monitoring violations, but it did not resolve territorial disputes, reunify families, or establish diplomatic relations. It simply stopped the shooting. For a while. Since then, thousands of smaller incidents have occurred. In 1968, North Korean commandos attempted to assassinate the South Korean president in Seoul. In 1976, 2 American officers were killed with axes by North Korean soldiers in the Joint Security Area during a tree trimming operation. The incident, now called the Axe Murder Incident, nearly triggered a full military response. In 2010, a South Korean naval vessel, the ROKS Chonan, sank near the maritime border. An international investigation concluded it was torpedoed by a North Korean submarine. 46 sailors died. North Korea denied involvement. Tensions spiked again. How does a war pause for 70 years without ending? In 2015, landmines exploded in the southern section of the DMZ, severely injuring 2 South Korean soldiers. Seoul accused Pyongyang of planting them. The North denied it. South Korea responded by resuming loudspeaker propaganda broadcasts across the border, which had been silent for over a decade. North Korea threatened military action if the broadcasts continued. The crisis de-escalated after high-level talks, but it showed how fragile the peace remains. In 2017, a North Korean soldier sprinted across the border under gunfire from his own side. He was shot 5 times but survived and defected to the south. Security footage from the Joint Security Area captured the entire event. North Korea has continued developing nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles. It conducted its 6th nuclear test in 2017, which registered as a magnitude 6.3 earthquake. The regime has stated these weapons are for defense and deterrence. The United States and its allies view them as a direct threat to regional and global security. Most of what we know about incidents along the DMZ comes from South Korean military reports, United Nations command statements, and satellite imagery analysis. Independent journalists rarely gain access to the border zone itself. When they do, their movements are controlled and monitored. North Korea operates a tightly controlled state media apparatus. Information from inside the country is difficult to verify. Defector testimonies provide some insight, but they represent a small and specific subset of the population. The armistice agreement itself is a public document. It has been violated hundreds of times by both sides, according to UN command records. Violations range from unauthorized crossings to artillery fire to aerial incursions. Satellite images show that North Korea has expanded fortifications along the DMZ over the past 2 decades. Bunkers, artillery positions, and tunnel networks are visible in commercially available imagery. This firmed, armistice violations exceed 40,000 since 1953. Unconfirmed, exact casualty figures from covert operations. South Korea maintains a public database of North Korean provocations. It includes dates, types of incidents, and casualties. The list is long. It is also incomplete, because not every skirmish or infiltration attempt is made public, for security or diplomatic reasons. Conflicting views and gaps. North Korea's official position is that it acts only in self-defense, and that South Korea and the United States provoke tensions through joint military exercises. Pyongyang argues that these drills simulate invasion and justify its weapons programs. Some analysts believe that North Korea uses border incidents and weapons tests as bargaining chips in negotiations for sanctions relief or economic aid. Others argue the regime genuinely fears regime change and sees nuclear weapons as the only guarantee of survival. Both views are supported by different readings of the same events. There are significant gaps in the historical record. Details about covert operations, intelligence activities, and behind-the-scenes diplomacy remain classified. We do not know the full extent of tunnels under the DMZ, though 4 have been discovered and are now tourist sites in the south. North Korea has never confirmed or denied their existence. Some incidents are disputed. In the Chonan sinking, a minority of experts questioned the torpedo theory, suggesting an internal malfunction or accidental mine strike. The majority of evidence supported the torpedo conclusion, but the debate reflects the difficulty of attribution in a closed information environment. An estimated 10 million Koreans were separated from family members during the war. Many have never reunited. South Korea has held occasional family reunion events, where elderly individuals meet relatives from the north for a few hours, under heavy supervision. These reunions are brief, emotional, and rare. Most applicants die before their turn comes. The people living near the DMZ, both north and south, have grown up with loudspeakers, military drills, and the knowledge that war could resume at any moment. In the south, school children practice evacuation drills. In the north, propaganda reinforces the idea that the country is perpetually under siege. Daily life is shaped by a conflict that technically never stops.
Landmines remain buried throughout the DMZ. They kill or injure soldiers, defectors, and wildlife.
Estimates suggest over 1 million mines were laid during and after the war. Clearing them would take decades and carries enormous risk. An armistice is like hitting pause on a movie. The story is frozen, but nothing is resolved. Both sides stay in position. The slightest jostle could restart everything. That is what the Korean Peninsula has been living with since 1953. This matters because North Korea is a nuclear-armed state. Any miscalculation, any accidental escalation could drag in the United States, China, Japan, and Russia. Modern weapons travel faster than diplomacy. There would be no time for the kind of negotiation that prevented nuclear war during the Cold War. Everything would happen in minutes. The war also matters as a case study in unfinished conflicts. When wars end with ceasefires instead of treaties, they leave wounds that do not heal. They freeze enmity in place. The same pattern appears in other parts of the world, from Cyprus to Kashmir to the Western Sahara. Korea is the longest-running example. We know that the Korean War never formally ended. We know that the armistice has been violated thousands of times. We know that millions of people live in the shadow of a conflict that could reignite. What we do not know is whether the current generation of leaders on both sides has the will or the leverage to finally turn the armistice into a peace treaty. That uncertainty keeps the war alive. What's next? One possible scenario is continued stalemate. Both sides maintain the status quo, with occasional flare-ups that are managed through back-channel diplomacy. This has been the pattern for decades. Confidence high. It is the path of least resistance. Another scenario is renewed dialogue. South Korea, the United States, and North Korea could return to negotiations aimed at a formal peace treaty, denuclearization, and normalization of relations. Past attempts have failed, but circumstances change. Confidence, medium. Political will is unpredictable. A third scenario is escalation. A border incident, a miscommunication, or a leadership decision could spiral into open conflict. Given the presence of nuclear weapons, this would be catastrophic. Confidence, low, but not zero. The risk is always present. A fourth, quieter possibility is generational change. As older generations pass, the emotional weight of the war may fade. Younger Koreans on both sides may approach reunification or coexistence differently. This is a long-term process, not a near-term shift. Confidence, medium over decades, low over years. The war that never ended continues, because no one has been able to agree on how to end it. That makes every day on the Korean Peninsula a kind of tightrope walk, balanced between history and uncertainty. If you want to understand another conflict that shaped the modern world in unexpected ways, watch The Invisible War How a Single Document Changed Everything, next. It covers the legal and political aftermath of conflicts that were never fully resolved.